Oh, good evening. Good evening to you all. I wish I could say I see you. Can you see us? I do see you. I see you in my heart. You know, it's so interesting about interior design. Don't you think so? Interior decoration. It's really lovely to have an ambience, to have an environment that's supportive for feelings of serenity, which lead to contemplation. And sometimes we've mentioned, I think we've had occasion to mention that under the water, Jacques Cousteau said that one time, the colors are more vivid, it's more beautiful. And I've experienced that. I've experienced the rays of the sun hitting the water and then breaking like a stick, seems to bend. And a rainbow came out, and it was even more vivid, saturated on land. And way back there in the temple, we're coming to you tonight from the Vedanta Society of Southern California in Hollywood. This temple has been dedicated to contemplation since 1938. So sometime when everything's fine again and we can see each other and have meetings, you come over. Check it out. Maybe you're in Maryland tonight or Pennsylvania, or who knows where. Come on down. Just between you and your inner being. See what you feel. Some people say they feel something in here that is palpable, like the space is more dense or something, and like there is an atmosphere. Vivekananda, we've had occasion to reference that before, says the cathedrals, for example, in Europe, the great Gothic cathedrals have an atmosphere because pilgrims have been coming for centuries and centuries. And, they leave their thoughts behind. That is to say, there's a certain degree of materiality, if you will, about thoughts. The Indians go as far as saying that the mind, which is composed of multiple things, of course, sense experience, and then back of the head, where we see the color of the flower, all of that, and then the intellectual capacity of the intelligent will to discern. Oh, yeah. I've seen that before. Like the little boy looking up the street on Hollywood Boulevard. That's a bus. The configuration of sights and sounds, he knows where to put it, discern. And the Jnana Yogi, we could catch on to that within 24 hours of coming here. Brahman is all. The great words of Shankara that ring through the centuries, Atman and Brahman are one. Infinity shining within, the infinity of all. And then the Jnani's discernment, 24 hours, 48 hours, to try to discern and distinguish the apparent from the real. Intelligent will. So, right back there in the back row, I wonder how you're doing tonight, Bob. The devotees are under something else. To me, they're like the roots of the tree that we see spill over the sidewalk. These trees, have you noticed the shapes and the size and the height? And every cell that is in this dance, a ballet pose that they hold for years and years, presupposes a cell, does it not? That's somehow balanced to support this tree with its angularities and its incredible seeking for the light. Yeah, it's a well-known thing among tree people. Neil Miller from Missouri, he tells me about this. I forget, but every tree's got to have basically more of a root structure, at least the strength of a root structure, that somehow knows the balance. They work it out together. So that's what the grand devotees are for this place, man. Hey, Bob, I can see him in my mind's eye, just like I can see you in my mind's eye tonight. Bob, sit back there. With a smile on his face. Yeah, kind of brightness. And you go up and he'll say, in meditation, for me, it's spiritual Disneyland. That'd be okay, yeah. Excepting it gets a little bit more of a bite, as we say, a little more of a zing. I take on water, kids. I do take on water. Because Robert, say what you will about time and space, was in what some of our farm people, I consider myself one mentally and spiritually, call Vietnam. And it just so happened the Army was trying out something to try to see where the fellows were that they were trying to keep track of. The only trouble was, that the trees, we're talking about the leaves of the trees were in the way. Do you see what I mean? So the Western analytical mind has to solve that problem. Solution obviously get rid of the leaves. When will we ever learn? When will we ever learn? So they developed Agent Orange, they sprayed it on the trees, the leaves drop, and oh yeah, some of it splashes up on what they're calling our boys. So he had some major structural reorganization going on in there. I mean, major physiological stuff. He's sitting back there talking about, hey, what? Spiritual Disneyland. Well, tonight we get to spend some time with Sri Ramakrishna. Now, there's lots of stuff going on in the religious life. Our founding Swami used to say that you put the founders, let's say, of these great rivers of faith in a room, a cage, if you like, and they'll all like each other. They will. They'll get on real good. Hey, you know that. Just examine your heart. You know that. You don't have to think about it. And their disciples, their followers, let's call them followers, will fight. So I'm not talking about a name of somebody. I mean, the name is very powerful, no doubt, but I'm not talking about this spiritually adept, they call him an adept, or that one, or this geography, or that one, this country, that country. I'm talking about the fact that there was a man in India. I love my Jesus, you can love him too. I love my Jesus. I remember going to Dr. King's church. It wasn't his church, it was a Victory Baptist church, but he spoke there. And the mothers, the older women, about 6 of them, one time we were there. That'd be my church if I wasn't here, that one in the Wilshire Reformed Temple. They were standing in the front, dressed in white. He's real, he's real, he's real, he's real. Jesus is real to me. He's real, he's real, he's real, he's real. Jesus is real to me. So many people doubt him, but I can't live without him. He's real, he's real, he's real, he's real. Jesus is real to me. Well, there was a man, call him Sri Ramakrishna, he's real, living in India in the 1800s, proclaiming the truth of all religions. That is to say, the map, as the semantics people point out, is not the territory, not the country, but the map will lead you there. And the path is part of the journey, you know. One of the great saints, women saints of the Christian church, all the way to heaven is heaven. So let's just see what's Ramakrishna up to tonight. I love it. Just like you're going to go somewhere, you open the atlas, you know what I mean? And you just point a finger, and you see where you land. That is where I'm going to go on my vacation. So let's find out if we can. What was happening on November 26, 1883? Now that was about 10 years, don't you see? More or less, round numbers, before Swami Vivekananda was sent, beckoned to by Sri Ramakrishna. He saw him. In India, they have lots of visualizations. Hey, they say you can see God. So Vivekananda saw his master, who had ascended, over the ocean, beckoning him. And basically, the idea was, come to Chicago. You know the story, 1893, the World's Fair at the Columbian Exposition, Parliament of the World's Religions, went on for a long time. And Vivekananda gave the clarion call, the lighthouse, that's Vivekananda. Across the banners of the religions of the world will be written, help and not fight. Love and not hatred. Cooperation and not destruction. That's because Sri Ramakrishna climbed the mountain of all of these faiths and found out, yes, it's the same experience at the highest level. And yes, the mystics, we need to hear more about them in the West. We got a few. We got them. And you know what the Western mystics call their endeavor? Seeking oneness with God. So, Holy Mother says that Sri Ramakrishna didn't exactly do this to create some kind of a specialty of harmony of religions. He just wanted to see God. He wanted to find God another way, another path up the mountain. Said, so many paths, so many faiths. All right, so here, 10 years before Vivekananda was called to come to the Parliament of Religions and preach love and not hate, and now, my goodness, 127 years on, the Swamis are quite impressed with how things have changed, how things have changed. Vedanta, one of the great disciples that came 3 years after it, Vivekananda's request to the West, stayed for 25 years, basically. 25 years, but 25 years later he goes back home. He said when he came, he was the only Hindu in America. That's a sociological term for us Westerners, you know. We love the term Vedanta. All right. So let's find out what was happening on November 26, 1883. It was the day of the annual festival of the Sinduryapati Brahmo Samaj. The Brahmo Samaj. England. England had quite a way of becoming pervasive. Every culture has some good in it, a lot of good. They got poets, they got mystics, they got, hey? So why don't we look on the bright side? Why don't we seek the best in each other and the best in each culture and country? England left the English language or some form of it. Think what that means. I mean, if he hadn't left, they hadn't left the English language, we wouldn't be able to understand Swamiji in our own tongue. And yet, just to make it kind of funny, the Indian people couldn't understand each other. I get a kick out of the fact that in the UNES of A, which is 3,000 by 1,000 miles, more or less 3 million square miles, we can understand each other pretty well. 4 main language groups or dialects, the New England, and then the Mid-Atlantic, New York, for example, the Southern with all of its incredible depth of interrelated experience, and the Western dialect, which picks up in Ohio and goes 3/4 of the way all the way over to California. They say that the Ohio person speaks without an accent. Boy, we can understand. At least we can try to understand, and here we go. The British had an influence which was somewhat self-centered of them, that their religion was a pretty good religion, and they didn't need or bother to try to figure out what anybody else's idea of God. They try mine. It's the best. So they got a whole lot of the intelligentsia, whatever you want to call it, intelligent young people of Calcutta to join a new expression, which basically was God the Father, without form, but very loving and very direct, of the English. And Keshav Sen was no doubt the great orator of his time, the great preacher of his time. Queen Victoria attended services. So that's what we're finding here is going on. And the ceremony was to be performed in Manilal Malik's house. The worship hall was beautifully decorated, like we're saying, with flowers, wreaths, and evergreens. And many devotees were assembled, eagerly awaiting the worship. Their enthusiasm had been greatly heightened by the news that Sri Ramakrishna was going to grace the occasion with his presence. Keshab, the founder of Vijay, Shivanath, and other leaders of the Brahmo Samaj held him in high respect. His God-intoxicated state of mind, his intense love of spiritual life, his burning faith, his intimate communion with God. And oh yes, there's one other little thing. Vivekananda had the idea we're going to be around with this new splurge, this new splash, for 1,000 years of vitality. So, now it's the new millennium, just say the new millennium. Well, these fellows had a way of innovating without destroying. I mean, it's maddening to the Western mind. So many things to reform, wherever we go, excepting ourselves. I'll get around to that someday, but first I'm going to reform you and everything else. And it's just so obvious that everything needed reform in India. And these superluminaries looked like they weren't going to lift a finger. Child marriage, this, that, and the other. Oh, yeah, they had Roman Roy. They had some Indian reformers, but basically what Vivekananda has said, why are you asking me about women's issues? Ask them. Our job is to clear. So one thing that is probably a good thing to think about, and our devotees on the distaff side can tell me if it's a good thing to think about, for the next 1,000 years, that's Ramakrishna, what they call their chosen ideal. Oh, wonderful. Everyone has her own personal, intimate, if you will, relation with God. Not 100 different gods, 7 billion different gods. And so what was Ramakrishna's chosen ideal? Mother. This man is thinking of God as mother. So along with this whole list that had intense love of spiritual life, the intoxicated state of mind, God intoxicated state, his burning faith, his intimate communion with God, and his respect for women, whom he regarded as veritable manifestations of the Divine Mother, capital D, capital M. Together with the unsullied purity of his character, his complete renunciation of worldly talk, his love and respect, this is quite a list, a symposium, his love and respect for all religious faiths, and his eagerness to meet devotees of all creeds attracted the members of the Brahmo Samaj to him. Devotees came that day from far-off places to join the festival, for it would give them a chance to get a glimpse of the Master and listen to his inspiring talk. Well, I don't know about you. I don't know. I don't know about you all. By that paragraph, that was quite a delivery from the USPS, whatever it is, spiritual. Yeah, universal spiritual delivery. New paragraph. Sri Ramakrishna arrived at the house before the worship began and became engaged in conversation with Vijay Krishna Goswami and the other devotees. The lamps were lighted and the divine service was about to begin. The master asked if Shivanath would come to the festival. A Brahmo devotee said that he had other important things to do and was not coming. Oh, yeah. Now, I'm not trying to be specific. You know what I'm saying? But it reminds me of a couple of fellows talking. And Jesus came to town that day. And I had other important things to do, and I missed him. I love the story of the two dinosaurs. Remember that? The two dinosaurs come down to the water's edge, go lumping along, and they see the ark disappearing. And one of them pounds his fist, on his other hand. Says, "Oh, shucks," he says, "was it today?" All right. So here it is now. We're lucky because we're there. Master, I feel very happy when I see Shivanath. He always seems to be absorbed in the bliss of bhakti, the love of God. Further, a man who is respected by so many surely possesses some divine power. But he has one great defect. Oh boy, here we go. Private stuff. He doesn't keep his word. Once he said to me that he would come to Dakshineshwar, where Sri Ramakrishna was, a temple, but he neither came nor sent me word. That is not good. Now here's a good one. You turn out the lights, and I suggest that this sun's going to be shining. Want to try it? Anyways, I can see it now. It is said that truthfulness alone constitutes the spiritual discipline of the Kali Yuga, the times in which we are now living, find ourselves. Or a mental attitude. Some people feel the golden age began when Sri Ramakrishna was born, for example, those that know about him, in 1836. If a man clings tenaciously to truth, he ultimately realizes God. And India is a big place, it always was. It hasn't gotten any bigger territory-wise, and that's a problem. but the people have multiplied beyond all reason, beyond all good reason. So, bear with me now. When he says that if a man clings tenaciously to truth, he ultimately realizes God. You've got all the people rattling around India that they have over there. They have had, probably ever since I've been here, Lord knows what it is now, about 3 times the population of the United States, are you with me? In 1/3 of the territory, like the U.S. east of the Mississippi. I mean, it's amazing. You don't step on each other's doty, you know. Oh yeah, every man, woman, child guaranteed 1 square foot to stand on. All right? Various points of view, I guarantee you. We have, and I say that in quotes, so many of us do, a feeling about Gandhi. We're just talking about him again today, you know. Influenced by Henry David Thoreau, that's the way he pronounced it, Thoreau. And incidentally, now they're finding out his sisters were a huge influence in his life. And Jesus of Nazareth were two main influences on Gandhi's life. He didn't get his method from the Bhagavad Gita, I guarantee you that. But he was raised, he had Jain relatives, and the Buddhist tradition in India, and there's a lot in perhaps even the Bhagavad Gita that would lead you to understand. But a lot of people in India did not feel about Gandhi the way we do. So they asked him one day, Brahmananda, what do you think about Gandhi? Very interesting, because these men have all seen, experienced God not just once, but they're living in it. The disciples, 16 disciples of Sri Ramakrishna asked Brahmananda, the grandfather of this place spiritually, what do you think about Gandhi? I want you to think about it. He said he is knocking on the very highest door of spirituality by his adherence to truth. Now, I'm trying to be good, I'm trying to be calm, serene. I want that to be written in flame across the movie screen of your anticipated entertainment in the United States. Sri Ramakrishna found, if you remember, that he could offer everything to Mother. Mother, here I am. I'm your child. Here's my good, here's my not good. Here's my intelligence, here's my ignorance. Take them both, whole bunch of pairs of opposites, and give me pure love for thee. Mother, mother. But he said, I could not say. Think of it. Here is my truth, and here is my untruth. I could not say that. So all I'm really trying to point out tonight, and for myself to listen, is something called God country. It's up here. It's not two-dimensional down here. It's up here. From up here you can see what I like to call these little jigsaw puzzle pieces partly filled out. Here's the ocean, here's the green stuff and the plants and these are the parties. These are countries. God country. Kingdom of God is within you. So let's modernize it, American English, 21st century. God country. And if you want to read some of it, I'm not talking about this, that, and the other. I'm not arguing with anybody. I suggest you turn to Matthew 25. And yet, not the beginning and not the end. The book ends, Alpha and Omega of Jesus' birth and death, as glorified and sanctified as they are. You've heard about the Christmas and Easter Christians? I went to the Riverside Church in New York, seat over 1,000 people, and the Boy Scouts would put down the programs in all those seats before our Sunday school. And on Christmas and Easter, we had overflow crowds in every nook and cranny of the place. We would have, recordings. I'm talking about what's between the bookends, and that is Jesus' life. As he died to make men holy. Let us die to make men free. One of the great, great hymns of the American experience said, and I'm going to say to us tonight, as he lived to make men holy. Let us live to make men free, and let's start on trying to find God within. All right. Matthew 25. The reason I say that is that's Jesus' platform. It's not that long. I'm really recommending it to those of you who still know how to read and want to. It's amazing. And you call yourself Christian? And much more to the point, and I call myself Christian? What am I saying? Matthew 25. Without this regard for truth, and of course Jesus puts a capital T on that and says, truth will make you free. You shall know the truth, which is oneness with God, the reality of God. That's what it is. The knowledge of reality. Without this regard for truth, one gradually loses everything. If by chance I say that I will go to the pine grove, I must go there even if there's no reason for it, lest I lose my attachment to truth. Oh boy, it's big tonight, kids. After my vision of the Divine Mother, capital D, capital M, I prayed to her. Well, here it is. Taking a flower in my hands, Mother, here is thy knowledge, and here is thy ignorance. Take them both and give me only pure love. Here is thy holiness, and here is thy unholiness. Take them both, Mother, and give me pure love. Here is thy good, and here is thy evil. Take them both, Mother, and give me pure love. Here is thy righteousness, and here is thy unrighteousness. Take them both, Mother, and give me pure love. I mentioned all these, but I could not say, Mother, here is thy truth, and here is thy falsehood. Take them both. I gave up everything at her feet, but could not bring myself to give up truth. Well, I'm sorry, we got a problem here because I'm ready to close the book. I am. I'm ready to say ta-ta. Night, y'all. Be sure to turn off the lights when you leave. I can't turn the lights off on anybody. Not anybody. I can't do it. Wind up the cat and put out the clock. But we're supposed to continue, so let's just see what else he's got for us tonight. Soon the service began according to the rules of the Brahmo Samaj. Remember, very Protestant, really high church. God the Father, you can't really see him, but you can feel him, and it's a direct covenant, Abrahamic covenant with God. And it's inward, and we got the best preacher in the whole of India. The preacher was seated on the dais. After the opening prayer, he recited holy texts of the Vedas and was joined by the congregation in the invocation to the Supreme Brahman. And I love these capitals, capital S, capital B. They chanted in chorus, all these are capital letters, Brahman is truth, knowledge, and infinity. It shines as bliss and immortality. Capital P, capital I. Brahman is peace, blessedness, the one without a second. It is pure and unstained by sin. The minds of the devotees were stilled, and they closed their eyes in meditation. New paragraph. The master went into deep samadhi. Samadhi, Indian. Nirvana, Buddhist. Satori, Japanese. Union with God, Western. He sat there transfixed and speechless. Look how he's preaching. You're not saying a word. You can't, we feel it. Imagine how they thought. After some time, he opened his eyes, looked around, and suddenly stood up with the words, Brahma, Brahma, exclamation point, on his lips. Soon the devotional music began, accompanied by drums and cymbals. Can you hear it? In a state of divine fervor, the master began to dance with the devotees. First time I've ever heard sound coming out of the Gospels through Ramakrishna. I feel it. Vijay and the other Brahmos danced around him. Now, I have to tell you, these Brahmo Samaj boys, they're not known for dancing. You know who's known for dancing? David. David is known for dancing. It said, and David danced with abandon before the Lord. You see, you all have been graced by something above the eyebrows, intelligence, learning, all that. Occasionally you get some simple country boy like me that just really don't have much above the eyebrows. They used to say during the Depression that a man's worth $2 an hour below the eyebrows. But my friends, if you're going to see dancing, come in. If you're going to hear singing, and boy, if you're going to have drums and cymbals right in front of the camera here, loud as can be. And in case you were giving up on this, that, and the other, and everybody about had it these days in the US of A, I'm going to just leave you one here just for fun, and you make of it what you will. Keep it or not as you will. If you want to see this, if you want to feel something, are you with me? Do you even know what I'm trying to say in my own ineffable, not very capable way? Go south. Horace Greeley said, go west, young man, go west. The leader of the Herald Tribune, a Tribune in New York. I'll say go south. That's what we all want to do in our own hearts. We want to go south. It's quite nice. So here they're all dancing around. They don't dance very often. But that's what they're doing now. Vijay and the other Brahmos danced around him. These preachers that are just talking about an abstraction or something, God is real enough, but very out there and very remote and whatever. All, yes, we live and move and have our being in him, but they're dancing now. And Vijay, the preacher, all the other Brahmos, dancing around him like the center of the galaxy, like the sun. And the planets are dancing around him. The guests and the devotees were enchanted. You know what they mean by enchanted. They're gone. Many of them drank the sweet bliss of God's name. and forgot the world. You know, it's amazing, Vedanta in the West. We had a wonderful magazine here, Aldous Huxley, all wrote for Vedanta, and the West, Vedanta in the West, 180 languages, don't forget it, spoken here in LA at home. So this experience called the Vedanta, which is merely the invasion, the influx, the tsunami, the ocean tide, you know, like 30 feet tidal crest in Louisiana this last week, of the Indian spiritual people, including the grand devotees coming over to this country finally after so long. It's fairly simple. Yes, it's fairly simple. They've got the idea, don't you know, that whoever you are, and wherever you come from, with all the diversity we have in the West, 180 languages spoken home, whatever the word is, if you hear, if you speak, if you think of the name of God, the name of God is one with God. And you don't have to get it quite right. And you don't need to worry about whichever name, that is to say your chosen ideal and so forth, you're referring to. Because if you say Daddy, don't you think he's going to come running? Jesus, in his exigency, his mind was always on the thought of his daddy, his father. Called upon him. He called upon God in his own language, his own dialect. And he said, Abba, Abba. It doesn't exactly mean father. It means daddy. Many of them drank the sweet bliss of God's name and forgot the world. Can't you understand? We can close the book in each of these paragraphs and go home, which is our hearts, the center of our hearts, and seek God. Seek God. And Vivekananda says, enough of this already, New York talk, enough of this seek business. Don't seek anymore. See. Feel. When I was a seeker, I sought both night and day. I asked the Lord to help me, and he showed me the way. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. Hey, that's my sister. That's my brother. 180 languages in LA alone. The happiness of the material world appeared bitter to them, at least for the time being. After the kirtan, the singing, all sat around the master, eager to hear his words. Master, it's difficult to lead the life of a householder in a spirit of detachment. Once Pratap and Pratap Chandra Mazumdar was a celebrated leader of the Brahmo Samaj. Remember who they are? Hey, let's cut to the chase. I like to cut to the chase. People know I'm sympathetic. I just don't The Episcopalians, that's what they are. They're the Episcopalians in Calcutta. The English told them, well, I don't know what you all are doing, but I know it's not like what we're doing because ours is the best. You want to worship God the Father like we do. Can't see him, but you can feel it. You know, that's it. Just follow the hymns and the practices. Episcopalian Church. Have I told you about the Indian devotees? You know, it's so much fun getting to know each other. There's a song like that. Here's its diversity. I mean, the Indian people have sacrificed something to come just 10,000 miles to be with us, let alone to try to show us, shine the light on the Gentiles, as Jesus said. That's what they come for, to shine the light on the Gentiles. So it's happened. Sometimes they, after some years, and they'll tell us something about Christianity, about the Christians. I said, well, you know, it's pretty easy, actually. The main difference between the Catholics and the Protestants is the Catholics wear their robes all the time, 24/7, you see, you know, whatever. They wear their robes all the time. And the Protestants, the preachers, only wear their robes when they're going up to preach. I said, yeah, but what about all these little denominations? You got all these, tell us about that. Oh, well, that's really simple too. The Baptists, naturally, that's where I come from, you know, farm days, Dr. King and all that. They said they're actually Christians who've learned to wash. You see? And the Methodists are Baptists who've learned to read. Now, the Presbyterians are Methodists who've gone to school, to college. And the Episcopalians are Presbyterians whose investments have turned out well. Bless their hearts. They take so much and they have a great deal of mysticism. Do you want to get me started? Don't get me started. But you look at the pictures. It's not over and done with. Is John Lewis over and done with, an authentic Satanist? No. You look at the pictures. Linked elbows. John Lewis and others leading the way. You got some Catholic nuns in there. And you got every other denomination. Dr. King said about 9/10 of the money that others than the home folks gave him came from Jews, silently. You got all these people. And I guarantee you, right there in the front line, with linked elbows, my friends, you'll find the Episcopalians. All right. So, sir, we follow the example of King, the celebrated leader, don't you see? This is Pratap here, of the Brahmo Samaj. It is difficult to lead the life of householder in the spirit of detachment. Pratap said to me, sir, we follow the example of King Janaka. 100% illumined soul, absolute, nirvikalpa samadhi king. Oh, you know, all those avatars, everything. He did for super luminaries in India, the whole kings. Oh, yes, and he had a daughter. I don't know if you know that. King Janaka, totally illumined. And the girl's name was, let me think now, was Sita. That's it. Some people feel that these are God men and women. We use the word God-saturated. All righty. We like to follow the example of King Janaka. He led the life of a householder in a detached spirit. We shall follow him. I said to him, can one be like King Janaka by merely wishing it? How many austerities he practiced in order to acquire divine knowledge. You remember the Danish comedian? Exclamation point. He practiced the most intense form of asceticism for many years and only then returned to the life of the world. Is there then no hope for the householders? Certainly there is. Now here they go. Italics are mine. There's no italics in here. But we're trying to encourage each other, aren't we? That we're trying to do. Enthusiasm, the Greek word for enteos, God within. That's what we're trying to do. That's what the devotees do for each other here. We kind of encourage each other. Cheering section support. That's what we have in common. So I'm going to put a few italics in here. They must practice spiritual discipline in solitude for some days. Thus they will acquire knowledge and devotion. This has been a big evening. You know, before the All-Star game, they have a day before, I think, called batting practice. The pitcher lobs up these real softballs to the best batters they've got. They go whacking away just one after the other, see how many of them they can hit out of the ballpark. That's what I feel we've been having happen all night tonight. So this is pretty big stuff. They said, thus they will acquire knowledge and devotion. You may remember this someday. That, God's own fool, that's kind of like my upstairs aspiration in a way. It's one of them said that when he was a young fellow around here, they never talked about jnani and bhakta. What are they doing, sorting peas? I mean, what is this? They're talking about knowledge and devotion. Each person has their own temperament, don't you see? Don't you see? Gotta get a home into that rock, don't you see? The guru knows. The manager of the baseball team. The Dodgers, you know that. Some of you, I call him St. Thomas of Lasorda. The guru knows your temperament, and besides, you're going to tell him. But it's not a question of I'm this and you're that and rate them like eggs or something in a carton. It's not like that. It's who you are, where you are, and do you feel something? That's the whole thing right there. Knowledge and devotion, my friends, is our goal. It's so easy to say, I'm right and you're wrong. By definition. I only eat shrimp. It's got to be a good thing. I'm going to start me a little denomination called the Shrimp Eaters. You know what Vivekananda calls it? He does. Kitchen religion. That's not what we're here for. I have to remember because Swami Swananda knew that we're filled with politics right up to here. The Western people. In India, if you want to grab someone's attention, you attach some kind of spiritual thing to it, and they'll follow right away. I honestly think that Dad thought the same thing, whether or not, that when Moses, was wandering for so many years in the desert, he advised the people not to eat ham. Because he didn't want to catch trichinosis. No, that's not so far-fetched. That's not out of thought, out of mind. So he attached it with a religious injunction, a religious sanction. No, we're people of God. We don't need to eat that particular meat. So here we go, don't you see? This is who we are, but it is not knowledge or devotion. This path, that path. Oh, it's so easy. It's too easy. Once you get some kind of adjective, iceberg, fresh iceberg lettuce, Alaskan salmon. What is Alaskan salmon? This is my way. And it becomes my way the highway. And it becomes superiority. We can't all have the same path. We're on different points of the paths to God. The only path that counts is, do we feel something? Do we want to feel something? The other night we got started and we never got around to it, but every so often, we do this here. Swami had 2 prayers, the founding Swami. How about this for prayer? Think of it. It's amazing. Oh Lord, I want to love thee. I want to love you. And you only. Please help me. We cross this way every so often. I want to do it to remember. Brahmananda said, speaking about love is love. And Swami Prabhupada, the founder, said, we have no excuse. We used to love as babies. And knowledge, Brahmananda says, knowledge is light. Well, I'll leave it to you. Everybody has his own way. But I just can't understand myself, being that simple country boy, why someone would want love without light. Or if by the grace of God, the ultraviolet end of the rainbow, someday in his own good time, some of these up the escalator, the elevator, if some of these aspects, dimensions might come upon us, who would want light? Of course, you forget everything at these moments of high, no doubt, but without ever having experienced love, the joy of the love of God. So he makes no bones about it. Do you see any commas? Do you see any semicolons here? I'll show it to you. Can you imagine? Thus they will acquire knowledge and devotion. Doesn't say one or the other. Besides, it's a wonderful song. None of the business. None of your business. Between you and the Guru. But then it will not hurt them to lead the life of the world. But when you practice discipline and solitude, keep yourself entirely away from your family. That can be 15 minutes a day, in meditation. You must not allow. Now here's where it gets to be exciting. This is not negative, my friends. This is very, very positive. Renunciation, that terrible word, means, detachment, attachment to God. Just let me sit for 15 minutes, the mother says to her children. Half hour, mother's time. Let me sit trying to love God. I'll be with you in a moment, and believe me, you'll feel better for it. You give me 15 minutes, a half hour of my own with God, and you'll be happy for it when I come out. So he just says here, remember, this is not negative, it's positive. He said you must not allow your wife, son, daughter, mother, father, sister, brother, friends, or relatives near you. While thus practicing discipline and solitude, you should think, because God is all. I'm telling you, if we think of each other as Brahman, we got it made. You know that. You know that. We got it made. So he said, you should think, while thus practicing discipline and solitude, you should think, I have no one else in the world. God is my all. You must also pray to him. Now here, it's really over and out for me, kids. You must also pray to him with tears in your eyes for knowledge and devotion. Thank you. Oh, I know the Lord.